All right, hey everybody, we're live streaming. Welcome to the Church Digital Discord, hanging out here in the live stream today. Broadcasting this out. By the way, we've got Whitebeard and First Pet in a Discord with us. I would love to hear one day the story behind First Pet. Roz is in the room as well. Roz, how you doing? I haven't seen you in a while. Glad you could come hang out with us today. But we've got, like I said, Whitebeard, First Pet, and Roz now in Discord, and also streaming this out on the social webs. And so, if you are out there on social watching this video, like, hey, I wonder what this is about. Come hang out with us in person. You can in Discord, as much as Discord's in person. So you open up a web browser, new web browser, and go to discord.thechurch.digital. Discord.thechurch.digital, and that will get you to our Discord channel. And it'll walk you through. If you don't have a Discord account, it'll help you create that, and it'll get you into our Discord server where you can hang out with us. I live stream every Tuesday. We do a number of live podcast interviews on here as well. I think we're doing an interview tomorrow with Dr. John and Joey for Wait That's a Church. And Leighton Flatcap does streams, and Whitebeard does Digital Monastery, and there's a lot of live interactive activity on here, and a lot of asynchronous conversation happening over at discord.thechurch.digital. And actually, it's one of those async conversations that I want to focus on the stream today, and start to get into. I think it'll be an interesting conversation. I was kind of hoping that the guest of honor might join us, but its time zones probably conflicting for him, and so he probably is not going to join us. But the good news is we're recording this and putting it on YouTube, so we'll be able to get it from there. And so, hey, we're wrapping up. Just announcements, get the garbage out of the way. Wrapping up season 8 of Wait That no season 7 of Wait That's a Church. There's been so many seasons, it's hard to keep up. And so, actually, just now I've been working season 8. We're going to do a season focused on mental health, and so Mindy Calliguire just confirmed for me that she's going to be one of our guests, and actually working with Megan Carter, who a lot of you know through the Church Digital. Megan Carter over at First Capital is going to be our guest, is going to be one of our guest hosts through that. And so definitely excited to see that happening. Oh, that's interesting. This invite link is invalid or has expired. Okay, didn't know that was going to happen. Um, Live. Give me 1 second. Um, this is why you always need somebody to run tech when you're going to do something in real time. Because when issues come up, it's like, oh, what am I supposed to do with that? Okay. All right. So where was I? Anyway, so Megan Carter is going to be on as our um, co-host for that season, and she's helping design it. And so I just started emailing a bunch of guests today to line up for season 9, and so that's going to kick off majority of August and a little bit into September, I believe. And so that'll take us into Labor Day. But excited about that. A lot of the mental health questions and implications that Megan's asking are huge, and honestly, the impact on digital ministry is super important as well. And so I'm excited to dig into that with Megan and a lot of the guests that we've got coming in to hear their voice speak into this and pointed towards digital is going to be super exciting. So look for that on the Church Digital podcast coming up in the days to come. But let's get into today. There was a interesting conversation that was started by my friend Mistala la 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 la. Anytime I say Mistala la 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 la, I always want Cobra la 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 is the running joke from the Cobra. Serpentor from the Cobra from the GI Joe movie from the '80s, which yeah, okay, I'm old, I get it. But Mistalala, really, his name's Tope. Itope, down in, I say down. He's probably no, it is down from where I am. It's beneath the equator. He's in Nigeria. He says, and this is in Q&A here on Discord right now. He posted this yesterday. Posted this recently. I'm trying to move my little bubble so I can see what I'm saying. Here it is. All right. So he says, "Hey everyone, I've got a question." I'm assuming he says, "Okay, in a scenario where you seem to be the only one who's done extensive research, experimentation, and learning on something like digital discipleship, and find yourself in communities where all they know about digital ministry is broadcasting their content. How do you lead innovation or guide people into adopting those mindset shifts without sounding like a know it all who just wants to rubbish what others have been doing? What can someone do to remain humble, especially in communicating, but direct to what the main issues are and why those in leadership positions need to change their mindset? I saw that from Tope, and I was like, oh, I could relate to that. It was interesting. The majority of those within TCD, he's had one, two, three, four, he had 3 or 4 comments in real time come back on that. And so it's an exciting topic. Hey, Patriots Gun Club, thanks for coming in. And so it's an interesting topic, right? So you do research, you have knowledge, you have understanding on a particular topic, yet um, the leadership, the decision makers, the people that have the authority, are operating on a misconception. Now, first off, especially if you're hanging out with us, like, the misconceptions are, it's a fact of life. um, they, the way that we talk about digital ministry, the way that we talk about things, I use the language flip the script all the time, because, oh well, digital ministry is nothing but consuming. No, it's highly relational, but you have to use that tool differently. And so, understand first and foremost that, that the way the leaders are thinking, especially in digital ministry, like if in his context where he's thinking it's heavily contextualized, or excuse me, heavily content driven. Well, it can be, and so that doesn't make the leader wrong, um, but that also doesn't make the leader right. It's a digital is a tool. Technology is a tool. It can be um, very content driven. It can be very relational. Its potential can reach 1 billion people across the planet using the little pocket device that you all have in your phones, or you can use that same device to reach somebody in the opposite side of the planet, or you can use that device to reach somebody who's literally next door. And so it can do mass, or it can do, with surgical precision, people literally across the globe. And so the context is, what is the person's expectations walking in? Let's just say that up front. Okay, well, they're recognizing in this situation, Mistala, la la la, that it's a very um, content driven, reach the masses tool. Another follow up question I would ask for our friend here is that good or is that bad? Because there are people that want the mass reach, um, and that's the win. Like, I've talked with pastors who literally is like, "Oh, Jeff, I want to hear my message heard around the world. I want to see people get baptized in Ethiopia off of hearing one of my messages." And I'm like, "Well, okay, what do we do with that person once they get baptized in Ethiopia? What's his plan?" And the response from this pastor was, "I don't know, Jeff. I really don't care. That's not my problem." And so, like, there are pastors who have a more of a mass mindset, and we see this actually with a lot of organizations where a lot of global organizations are trying to reach the masses. But even organizations like He Gets Us and the Billy Graham Association and Media Impact International and some of these organizations with the Chosen. I talked with some of the leadership of Chosen yesterday. And even those, like, they have this global reach where they're trying to connect with people globally. But at the same time, with that reach, they're also trying to drive them and get them connected into physical or digital communities for discipleship and engagement. And so part of it is recognizing, hey, what is the person trying to achieve? What's their goal in what they're trying to do? the pastor in this situation. You know, it's funny. Like I remember I was actually hired. It's funny. First Pet or no, Patriot Gun Club actually might be able to relate to this story a little bit because he was in it amongst the mix. I was hired to be a digital pastor at a church here in Miami. Oh my gosh, um, way back, and I want to say the year is 2005, maybe 2006. Yeah, you know, it was 2006. And so the agreement I had with the executive pastor was I was currently a contract production person at the church, and the leadership of the church said, "Hey, Jeff, we want you to come on staff. You're eventually going to be digital pastor. We want you to really explore and innovate with what digital ministry looks like." Way back in 2006, he said, but first we want to go multi-site. And so, can you take our systems for one campus and basically build out our multi-site structure? And so, Patriots Gun Club was actually at that first campus we launched in 2006, Christ Fellowship Homestead. And over the next 18 months, I took Christ Fellowship Miami from one campus to five campuses, literally over the span of 18 months. So I oversaw 200 to 300 volunteers spread out across the city of Miami. And I was the only production support, paid production support across the entire, every campus combined. It was crazy. It was absolutely insane. But I survived. And I remember, going back to leadership and saying, okay, all right, I'm done. I built out your multi-site system. It's great. It's intact. How do I transition on? Because I mean, this multi-site, this live production stuff's nice, but I'm really much more excited about the other. And it was interesting. Leadership said, "Oh, we've changed our minds. We're not interested in digital ministry." And so what proceeded after that was, 6 months of me pleading my case for digital ministry and trying to change minds of leadership. And there was some interesting advice that came out of that season to me from someone on leadership that were trying to, make the right decision for the church. At the time, the church had some theological differences with digital church that once again was based off of misconceptions and misperceptions and misunderstandings of what technology could be. Um, but it was interesting. The best piece of advice that I've ever been given was by one of the pastors in that season. He said, "Jeff, when you talk to me about digital ministry, you sound like you." He says, "If you want to convince me to buy into digital ministry, you can't sound like you, Jeff. You need to sound like me. So learn how to talk like me." And okay, maybe there's some egotistical wiring kind of in that biased in that statement. Jeff, if you want to convince me, you've got to sound like me. But at the core, what was he really trying to say? Hey, Jeff, what's important to me? What's important to leadership? What's important to the church? What's the mission and vision? If you can get your ministry, if you can get digital to align with what we're wanting to do, well, then maybe there's opportunities there. But don't sound like you. Don't use your language. I don't understand your language. I need you to use my language so you can sound like me. Because if you sound like me, you have a better chance of convincing me. And for months, yeah, I may be bitter. Um, oh, Whitebeard. What's important to God? Uh, bunk what the church wants. That's true. We'll get more into that here in a little bit. But the reality was that what I what I wanted to do. I mean, honestly, it didn't align with what the church was felt called to do. I mean, let's even fast forward. I was man, with that church we were doing microsites online. We had micro locations off of online broadcasts down in the Florida Keys, in New York City, and Georgia, and the Carolinas, multiple in the Carolinas, Atlanta. 51% of our audience online was outside of the state of Florida, and that was, I mean, that was mostly organic. We weren't doing any paid ads at the time. But what was fascinating to me um, was at the time, online was actually viewed as a distraction because what they felt called to do was in the city of Miami. And so rather than having conversations with me about hyper focusing digital to be more targeted towards Miami, they just assumed, oh, it can't be, and proceeded to to write it off and discredit it. I was pastor. I joke about pastor emoji title. That was actually the pastor emoji title, a pastor Photoshop title. And received a lot of that kind of feedback in that season. Hey Wes, hey Ian, from just the staff in that church. Um, and it was interesting. Like, some of leadership was very much on board with what I was trying to do. Some leadership at that church was very anti what I was trying to do. And so there wasn't even clarity with leadership. I was getting praises, and I was getting, whatever the opposite of praises are in a church setting, ridiculed. I was getting knocked. I was getting um, ridiculed's too strong of a word. I was getting corrected away from some of the ideas, that were en route. I remember it was so confusing at some point. I actually stopped. I was like, all right, I'm not going to do any more digital ministry for the next. And literally, it was 6 months. I was maintaining. I wasn't building. But for 6 months, I was literally meeting with leadership every week, trying to help them get a better understanding of what digital was. Now, it was challenging to me because I was at this stage of my life. I had interjected a lot of myself into this equation, a lot of my pride, a lot of my ego. And this is confession hour. Like, I remember I came in to pitch the idea, and I was pitching the idea of a mobile app. A mobile app that would be tied to the discipleship process, and more than just consuming a an online service, whatever. And the idea of I remember, like, I even used the word discipleship and disciple, and it was like, oh no, Jeff, we don't do discipleship, we do small groups. Like, even the word, I was corrected on, because it wasn't that what I was trying to do wasn't what the church was called to do. But I kept talking about, like, designing this custom mobile app and designing a discipleship process into it. And I mean, that crap's not cheap, right? And I was in this meeting, and so I'm pitching, wireframes, the whole spec on this custom app. And I've already talked to ministries about their support and got others on board, and did all that. And I remember one of leadership said, "Hey Jeff, all that's nice. I found this website. It's called freechurchapp.com. And basically, like, if you go on there, you can build a church website for free. Like, would you be interested in some? Do you think something like that could work?" And to this day, I don't know if they were serious or kidding, but that was like the breaking point for me. Um, but I'll just be honest. That was me. It was my ego in that moment that broke. That caused me to snap. That caused me to really get in this position where it's like, I really can't be here anymore. Like, I cannot support this ministry of what they're doing. The idea of trying to get people to come to a physical building using digital to do that, it's not a bad idea. By First Pet, it's not a bad idea by any stretch. The idea of hyper focusing digital within a regional area to get people to connect into a physical community, sure, why not? Um, to be honest, it's not interesting to me. It's been done, um, and I really felt more called to more pioneering, more advanced, more ideas. And the vehicle, the church, the organization that I was at, to be honest, I wasn't a fit. Now, what was really hurtful for me was that was the church that I had grown up in. I had actually worked in that church in my teens as an intern, in 20s in my student ministry, in my 20s and 30s in production, in my 40s in production and digital. Like I literally had spent the majority of my work career, that church was my boss more than any other organization was. And the realization that I didn't fit hurt. I actually wasted a couple years because I had that realization that I didn't fit. Um, but I fought that idea. I kept trying to cling on to, well, I'll find other value in other ways. I'll do other things for the organization and that will win their favor and that will let me. And then so I'll work a full-time job and then that'll be my hobby. Digital ministry will be my hobby. And so I'll sneak it in when nobody's looking or I'll get all the authority I can and make it okay. And I'll get it myself into those rooms where I can fight for what I need to when the time's right. And at the end of the day, it didn't align with what the church was and the church leadership felt the church was called to do. And really, I hate to say it, I hated, I wasted, should use the right word, I wasted 2 years of my life trying to appease leadership and resurrect a dying horse that was not being strangled by anything that I was doing, but by what leadership was cutting off. It was funny. It was actually my request for budget that was the nail in the coffin. Because when I'm like, hey, we if we're really going to see this thing grow, I'd love to hire some people and take it to the next level. And I was basically told we don't even like the level that it's at now. You're going to kill it. And I was like, well, if we're actually going to talk about killing things, then I'm going to go. Y'all can kill it instead. And that's the tenure of that story. Now, reality is that there's always two sides to the story. Honestly, I was not doing the job that the church wanted because I was not a fit, because my mindset was driven towards a different direction. They did a much simpler approach to what they wanted, and they've got it, and it's working. Digital leads to physical, and that's a great approach. That's a safe approach for 2024. I wouldn't call that pioneering. I wouldn't call that early adopter or early majority. I think that's mid majority. I think that's what probably the majority of churches want today. And they are going to reach the people. Thanks, Ross. They're going to reach the people that will come to buildings. Maybe there's nothing wrong with that. I just really am passionate about reaching the people that the buildings will not reach, that the buildings cannot reach, that the buildings have yet to reach. And really, I mean, this is what brought me to the Church Digital and the planters. We have this conversation all the time with the Church Digital. Is are we here to help the established churches doing digital ministry? I think so. Am I at all interested in conversations about broadcasting or content strategies or things like that? Actually, I do, and I will literally change hats, and I'll have a conversation with you about Resi, and I'll point you towards what they're doing and some of that work. But that's not the stuff that's happening inside the Church Digital. The Church Digital is literally in the church within Resi right now. I'm having conversations. There's an organization I'm working with, Lausanne. We're trying to figure out how to get Lausanne's uh, services broadcasted live online in 7 different languages simultaneously. And so, and I'm working and to develop an interactive experience towards that. And so, the Church Digital is talking to them about helping out. So we're really excited about what that could be. But literally 7 different languages. I mean, so like that's intriguing. That's interesting. That's something that's not been done before. And so, like for me, it's all about working with the pioneers that are attempting to do something new. That's my calling. And the unfortunate reality is that that calling is unique. Um, at least I haven't found a lot of organizations that will put money behind their mouth in that. Um, the unfortunate reality was I didn't get another job with a company. I started my own thing. Maybe that's not unfortunate. Maybe that's just because I'm a jerk and want to do my own thing. But the heart of this is that, at some point I got tired of working with churches to be a digital pastor. Did you realize I've told this story several times, I think. I was actually hired 4 different times to be a digital pastor. And only one time did I actually ever have the title digital pastor. It wasn't like they changed the online pastor or some whatever. Literally 3 of the 4 times I was hired for a position, or during the interview process that they said they were open for it. Um, by the time I got there and got into the job and did what the other parts were, leadership changed their mind, said they weren't interested in it, or they had some leadership vision shift or things like that. And so when I walked away in 2018, it was, hey, I am going to do it myself. I'm going to do the thing that nobody's buying into, and I'm just going to create this organization myself, and that's where we are with the Church Digital. Now, it's an interesting challenge because we want to resource physical church pastors. Like on the call right now, I've got Ian. Ian's a small church pastor up in the Pacific Northwest, and so like I'm all about resourcing Ian and helping him. Ian's at a small church up in that area, relatively new. It's a community church, and so he's going to hyper focus digital in his specific area. Visions of micro churches actually might not be that bad of an idea for Ian. He would have to strategize to get some of that going. Um, and so like there's opportunities even for small churches to think differently with how they're utilizing digital. Um, the safe approach is not something that honestly that I can relate to in 24. Um, I feel like there's so much at risk because if COVID taught us anything, it taught us that the safe approach, doing what everybody else is doing, is only going to get you the same people that are already coming. I mean, church growth pre-COVID was like church transfer. Um, let's just say 25% of people are actively involved in church. Um, at this 25% of Americans are actively involved in church. That number has dropped steadily over the past 20 years. So, like, what we're doing is not working. Why the crap would we not do something different? And so, when you get challenged, and I'll go back to Tope. Tope's asking this question in the Q&A chat of TCD Discord. Hey, I've done a lot of research. I've done a lot of experimentation. I know I can justify what I'm talking about. But when I talk with leadership, they don't see the relational aspects of digital. They only see their preconceived notions, and they're discrediting me. What do I do? Um, Tope, I would use the language wipe the dust off your feet. Um, Move on to the next one. It was funny. Another church here in Miami. I was brought in maybe November, December 2019. I knew the creative director at this church, and he asked me to come in and meet with their leadership to talk to them because they had some questions. They were considering broadcasting their church services online in 2019. And so I met with this church and the lead pastor, who's a friend of mine, unequivocally yelled at me for doing church online and resourcing church online in 2019. Jeff, you should confess your sins before God um, for taking people out of the bride of Christ, his church, taking people away. What you're doing is a sin, and we will never broadcast our church services online. Yeah, the conversation went very ugly, very dark, very quickly. I was not expecting it. I knew this guy. I'm sorry you feel that way. It's obvious I'm not going to change your mind. And so I left November 2019. Now, this guy, the pastor, he was driven by theological minding wirings in his decision. In my experience, a theological um, opinion is not one that I have the ability to change, especially if I don't know the pastor and the pastor doesn't trust me at a theological level. If I'm coming in as a cold call, if I'm coming in with a lukewarm relationship, I mean, think about it. A pastor is going to seminary. He's got people that have invested years into his life that are making him or her wired the way that they are. And so a theology argument is not something that gets changed easily. And so if there's a theological difference or opinion towards online, I'll never change it. What I've done in a couple of those situations is I'll find someone else in leadership or someone else at the church that the pastor does trust. I'll talk to them and see if I can get them to see online and send them where the two of us go to have the conversation about online instead of me by myself. Because theology, I cannot change. I don't have the relationship with somebody, at most people, that I could have a theological conversation with. So I don't bother. Now, if it's not theology, if it's opinion, well, then that's you can maybe have that conversation. But once again, it depends upon how much they trust you. Even in casting vision, relationships still involved. Even if you're a consultant coming in trying to help the church, you got to build that relationship. You've got to develop enough wins that they trust you. You've got to, you know, boil the frog slowly. You can't swing that sledgehammer right off the bat. You gotta get the wins up front so that they're more comfortable saying the yes when you swing the heavy hammer. That's been a lot of the challenge for me. Um, is a lot of times I'll walk in without fully assessing and understanding the why behind what they're saying. I didn't take advantage of that as well as I should have. But all of that really got me to the place of, you know what? I rather than making people think different, honest to God, I'd rather just work with the people that think different. And started creating the church digital to really attract this idea of digital planting and digital ministry and relational mindset of digital discipleship and okay, then if I can't make people think the way that I am, and there are people out there that are thinking like me, well, let me just be the magnet, be the true north that brings these people in, and let's create the community together of the church digital, and that's resourcing, equipping, and empowering people to do what God they feel God leading them to do. Like, I mean, I hate to say it, I at a personal level, I gave up. I gave up working in a lot of cases with the established church, trying to get them to think the way that I do. Um, Instead, it's okay. How can we empower the people that are out there wanting to do something different to succeed? How can this generation of innovators succeed to empower the next generation of innovators? How can we move the needle towards innovation within the church space? That's really has been the challenge here, is trying to think to get people who think different to succeed, to hopefully birth more people who think different. Is the church digital is it a church planting organization? Is it a discipleship organization? Are we the next Stadia? Are we the next I don't know, KC Underground? I don't really like either of those. Um, Magnetic North versus True North. Thanks for that, Whitebeard. I was actually wanting to qualify that. You said it for me. Whitebeard and Patriot Gum Club. You two would love each other. Like, oh my gosh, I just that would be a lot of fun. You two hanging out. Um, here's what I here's what I know. We are all about helping and resourcing missional ideas. whether that's discipleship, whether that's planting, whether that's innovating, whether that's developing. For me, that's the cause, that's the focus. And I would rather hang out with people who are saying yes and help them than to fight with people who are saying no. I literally have worked in church staffs where every day I felt like I had to fight for something. And it's exhausting. It is literally exhausting when you have to fight for what you believe in your mindset every day. And just to be honest, that's why you don't, that's why I didn't fit, because every day I had to fight. And if I have to fight for what I believe, what the organization wants isn't bad. It's not extra biblical necessarily. It just isn't aligning with what I want to do, what I feel like God called me to do. I held on to jobs too long, the majority of times. It's funny because I've never been at a job longer than 5 months, so 5 years. So you can infer what that says. But when I, I don't want to lose the paycheck. I'm always in fear of um, what life would look like outside of salary. And so, wife, kids, mortgage, bills. I mean, and all those are reality. In many ways, my fear was crippling me for what God had for me. I often wonder what my life would have looked like had I moved quicker. How much more advanced, how much more prepared, how much more where would these organizations be had I had a couple more years to develop them? Where would God take me had I been more faithful? Had I not been fearful, living in fear in those situations? It's hard. Like even now, I'm contract to contract. I'm my main contract right now expires September 30th. I could be basically unemployed October 1. And that used to drive me into a fear state where it's like, I'm crippled by that. And it is scary. But at the same time, okay, God, I do believe I'm following you in this. I do believe you're using me in this season. Where am I going? What do you have for me in this? And hopefully, prayerfully, things are going well, and we'll continue to go so. The hard truth here is that for many of us, we are square pegs that won't fit in round holes. That's the reason I love the TCD logo and the graphic, the branding, as much as it is. And Barbara Carnero and her team, Word Revolution, did a great job. Um, I mean, you just even the hat that I'm wearing, the square pegs, the squareness of it. Um, we are this with the square pegs. We think differently. We operate differently. Some of us are not called to be the spaces that we're in. Some of us are called to take those innovative ideas and that out of the box thinking and leave the organizations and the churches and the corporations that we're working for and are called to do something different. Some of us are. Some of us are hanging on to that brass ring, whatever it is, um, clinging to safety when God's calling us to be not safe, clinging to stability when stability is actually an idol. Some of us are desperate to get out of where we are, and maybe God's calling us to stay. See, that's the interesting challenge with Tope. Like, I can tell you unequivocally, I think I'm using that word in the correct context, that I was not called to the church that I was at. Like, there was a moment where I thought it, and and there's a moment where I knew, and I make a horrible church employee. I do. Like I would argue that my 15 years of church staffing experience, not that great in the grand scheme of things. Um, some of you though make great staff, church staff employees. Some of you need to cast vision and stretch your leadership a little more. And that may be helpful, that may be hurtful, that may be helpful, um, that may be what you need to hear, but not necessarily what you want to hear. But that's the prayer, right? Whether people align with the way that you think or whether they're not, whether you're doing something on your own where you're surrounded by people that are willing to run, or whether you're fighting for something every day of your life, it's not really up to you, is it? There have been so many times in my life that I thought I knew what God wanted for me, only to find out He had something else in mind. I was sure, I was sure, like as sure as I heard it from the angel's mouth straight to my ears, only to find God did a yin instead of a yang. And you know what? It worked out better. Those 2 years I wasted, probably didn't actually waste them. I think God was developing humility in me and breaking me of some bad habits. The frustration that I had, well, in hindsight, I recognize that the frustration I had wasn't really something I should have been frustrated about, but was recognizing how I was working with people who thought differently than me, and starting to recognize really what discipleship was all about, and that it was me that was causing the frustration and the hurt, not the organization. I know. I just, I Patriot is blowing up chat, and I love it. God never wastes time. I mean, it's true. The the times where I think I know what's going on, God shows me wrong. And the times where I'm like, God, I have no freaking clue what you're doing here, is the time that He shows up in huge ways and does things far beyond what even I can handle. To be honest, that's the prayer of the church. My prayer for the church digital now. God, I am a stupid man. Open the doors so wide that I know to walk through them, and close the doors shut that need to be closed so I know not to. Do something here that's far beyond anything that I or the leadership here can do. And I feel like we're at the precipice of it. I always feel that way, but man, we just, it's that boulder just keeps getting further and further up that hill, right to the cliff. So my prayer for you, Tope, and everyone else, is that you pray for God's eyes and God's patience and God's tongue in this season. May you speak with wisdom, not with ego, not with pride. May you speak with humility. May church leadership find you not a digital person or not a physical person. I don't know. May they find you to be a person of God, first and foremost. It's a lot harder to say no to a person you trust spiritually. Oh, just a thought for the day. Hey, it's been a lot of fun hanging out with y'all. I don't have much else to contribute on this stream. I saw this post from Tope. Feel free to jump into the Discord. Like I said, it's in the Q&A channel. Give some comments or encouragement to Tope on that, and I know all of us can relate at some context to that. Wes, I think you had already contributed some in there. Thanks for sharing some of your story on that. And but I know we've all have experienced some pain and struggles in that season, and so let's encourage our friend in Nigeria who's going through that in the season. So cool. Hey, and with that, I think we're going to wrap up this stream. Less than an hour. I don't think I've ever done a stream this short, but I'm out of gas and I'm tired. So it's been a lot of fun hanging out with y'all. Wes, Patriot, Gun Club, Ian, Whitebeard, and anybody else. Hector was around here. Roz Lilia, I think, was around here first. Pet, and some others were as well. It's good to see Roz. Glad she stopped by. But hey, I hope this has been great. And tomorrow, 5:30 Eastern. I got to change the time right now on Discord, but we are doing. Um, wait, that's a church. We got Dr. John Harris and Joey coming on to talk thinking different. Hey, what an interesting topic, thinking different. It'll be on the podcast tomorrow. We're going to do that interview 5:30 Eastern right here in Discord. All right, everybody. That's it for me. I'm done. Talk to you later.